Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I'm Chef Marcus Giuliano, and I'm a chef on a mission. Today's mission, we're going to talk about pesticides, organic agriculture, biodynamic agriculture, and specifically related to the wine world. Here's a great article that I pulled up. This is current news as of second week in December 2014. Burgundy winemaker cheers a victory for people power after conviction for refusing to spray vines with pesticides is overturned. So this happened in 2013, but he had just gone to court and had been awarded a victory here. He actually appealed, and it was overturned in his favor. So Emmanuel Giboulot refuses to comply on the grounds that the disease that the French government was saying was really not an immediate threat in his region. So this is an interesting story. And I want to read this story. I'm going to read this article, and the point I'm trying to make here is that if we listen to our doctors, to our government, to the CDC, to everybody, all these so-called experts, we would be bombarded with all of these so-called antibiotics, vaccinations, pesticides, you name it. They're trying to pump stuff down our throats, on our land. They're just overdoing it. And sure, there's a place for antibiotics. Sure, there's a place for certain types of medicine. Sure, there's a certain place for it. But in my opinion, I think it's really over-abused. And so does Emmanuel, the French winemaker here. So a few wine drinkers consider pesticides as a required ingredient, but a vineyard owner in Burgundy, France had to resort to the courts to uphold his right to keep them from his latest vintage. Emmanuel Giboulot, 15, won broad support last year when he refused a government sanction to spray pesticides on his vines near in his French vineyard near the Côtes de Beaune, the Côte d'Or region in Beaune, France, in Burgundy. So originally he was fined. This is a victory for people and power for the whistleblower, Mr. Giboulot said on his stand. So this really divided the Burgundy region, because a lot of people thought, a lot of other winemakers thought, that if he wasn't going to spray his property, that he was going to spread this disease. He was going to spread this golden rot, what they're calling it. That because he wasn't spraying, he was going to spread this. How many times have we heard that, the unvaccinated children are going to spread disease? And when you read a lot of these reports, it's actually the people that aren't vaccinated that are vaccinated, that actually have the vaccinations, that are getting the diseases. So it's like, it doesn't really make sense. So, of course, because he's an organic or biodynamic wine producer, he believes in strengthening his soil. He believes that soil quality is very important. So the soil is his immune system. Just like our body's immune system. The stronger your immune system is, you're going to fight things off. You're going to fight off disease. And so, of course, a lot of the vineyards didn't understand that. So it brought a lot of scrutiny to him, saying, well, you need to do this. So the pressure was put on by other vineyards as well, not understanding. But he had a petition out there. His Facebook page grew to over 130,000 likes. And I know for me, I enjoy wine, and I'm going to opt for organic over non-organic anytime. Years ago, organic winemaking techniques, were thought of like a hippie wine. But in reality, some of the best vineyards in France and around the world, some of the most expensive vineyards, have been strict organic and strict biodynamic. I mean, since inception. So, it's like they've done this over and over for centuries and for centuries, for generations and for generations, and all of a sudden, in the last 100 years, it's all of a sudden fertilized with this, spray with that, do all these things to make it, to make your crops supposedly better. When in reality, by dousing your crops and dousing your field and the soil, you're actually making things weaker. So, for example, we've all heard of antibiotics and immune bacteria-resistant antibiotics. That's because the overuse of antibiotics. You just keep pumping your body. This is happening with pigs and chickens and cattle, because they just pump these things over and over with antibiotics, and it's just not necessary. Now, I understand that factory-farmed animals are totally different than animals out in a pasture that are individually cared for, and that whole thing. So in factory farming, at some point they're going to need the antibiotics because the disease is rampant in those kinds of confinements or in that type of environment. But when you're doing biodynamic wines, organic wines in the vineyard, you have crop rotation. You're not ripping out your crops, but you have crop alternation where in between the crops, in between your vines, they're growing different things like broccoli. So there's different things that are happening on the vineyard besides just wine, besides just the grapes, the vines. That's a very important part. You know, I had the pleasure of listening to Nicolas Joly from France speak several years ago on biodynamic. He's one of the like international global spokespersons for biodynamic winemaking, biodynamic vineyard practices. And it was very interesting the way that he explained, you know, and it's everything's in the soil, everything's the immune system, everything's what you do to it. Now here's the interesting thing. Emmanuel, the winemaker here in France, actually stated that he would have actually sprayed if he thought it was an immediate threat. But he said it was not an immediate threat. The bacteria or whatever they were spraying for had come nowhere near that village. So he said if it came down to push and shove and it was actually right there, if it was right there and it was an immediate threat, then that would be a different scenario. But he just felt that it wasn't unnecessary just to go out there and spray, which is the whole point of my video here. We do so many things just so unnecessary. We take all these drugs, all these prescriptions, our cattle, our livestock is just doused with everything. Our crops are just doused constantly with everything, and a lot of this stuff is just totally unnecessary. A lot of these inventions of antibiotics in medicine are phenomenal inventions, I mean phenomenal medical breakthroughs, but when they're misused, that's when it turns around. That's when you get the bacteria resistant, the disease resistant organisms out there that then antibiotics don't work for them. And then you have farmers that just have to keep pumping cycles and cycles of fertilizers onto their land because what they're doing is not sustainable and it's not working. Sure, it's nice to be able to buy fertilizer and put fertilizer on, but if you're not doing it the natural way and you're not strengthening your soil and you're not giving back to your soil, you're not planting cover crops and rotating, the cycle catches up with you and you're at a point where you have dead soil, where you have a dead immune system, where the system breaks down. It's just so crucial. You know, I just wish people would understand that a lot of these things are great, but they're for emergencies. They're for immediate threats. Believe me, I don't take antibiotics. I hate to take antibiotics. I've taken 2 rounds of antibiotics in the last, I think, 10 years. One because I had an infection that was in my kidneys, and I forgot what the other time was. But prior to 12, 15 years ago, before my daughter was born, I was on antibiotics all the time. It's like every winter I had pneumonia, or every other winter I had pneumonia, I had strep throat, I had bronchitis, I had something. And I was on antibiotics for something. And once I changed my diet, once I started eating cleaner food and started exercising, got all the crap out of my diet, that's when that's when I strengthened my immune system and I got rid of all my standard medication, and above and beyond, I didn't have to take antibiotics when I got sick because I wasn't getting sick nearly as much, and I wasn't getting sick nearly as bad. So the cycle will come back around if you treat the soil, if you treat your immune system, it'll all regenerate and come back, and it's just a marvelous thing. So, you know, this French winemaker, good for him for standing up, and he appealed it and he won. And you know, we have a right to know what's in our food. We have a right to know what's in our wine, what's in what we're consuming. We have every right to know. And for people out there that are standing up for our right and having the least possible funky ingredients, pesticides, chemicals, all that kind of stuff, fillers, cheers to him. I know he's just doing wine, he's not doing food, but cheers to him for standing up and believing, you know, that's the right thing to do. I'm Chef Marcus Giuliano. Thanks for watching this video. If you like my videos, please hit like, subscribe to my channel, and definitely pass it on.